Like many years before it, 2019 has been massive for you. I'm going to read this so I get it right. You had the release of John Wick Hex, Erica, and the Bradwell Conspiracy. That's just looking at your work with games, as well as the announcement of your work on Chorus. What does 2020 have in store for you, and are you planning on slowing down at all?
Well, it's funny how, like, um, the funny thing is that the reason 2019 felt so busy for me was actually, I mean, Erica and Wick particularly were a big part of it, but Bradwell actually, I finished a long time ago, and then they decided to do, they wanted to do a simultaneous release on every major console. So there was
Right.
like almost a year of porting the game. So I had been done for ages before it came out. And then it was ironic that it ended up on the literal same day as John Wick. Ironically, the biggest reason 2019 was so busy was I did a tremendous amount of live concerts, and I was on planes
Wow.
like every day, seemingly, and a lot of recording sessions and just moving around, and that stuff goes kind of largely unseen. Broadly, I mean, obviously, if it's a concert, hopefully it's not unseen, but it's seen by those whatever 1,000 people in that city that day, as opposed to however many online, just kind of in general. But anyway, that said, 2020 certainly has plenty of exciting stuff coming up. Kind of usual story of a lot of it I'm not able to talk about. There is one game that I'm working on now that I'm very excited because it's an IP that I've been a fan of since I was a kid, and I was just absolutely over the moon when they asked me to work on this game. It's a type of game I've never done before, and it's a genre of music that I'm just absolutely not associated with at all. So that's exciting. And then Pathless, Giant Squid's game, which I've already been working on for 2.5 years now.
Wow.
We're starting to round the bend towards the finish line on that. There's still plenty of work to do, but the cues are starting to be more and more kind of final quality or final writing, and now soon I'll begin the process of the recording sessions, and I'll be in London at Abbey Road for part of it in January, and then recording quite a bit in LA and in Eastern Europe, and little sprinkles for the next few months. But that's starting to wind down, which is exciting. But the winding down is actually a ramping up, like race to the finish line. But I'm really excited. I love that game. I love working with them. And then Chorus is really exciting. It's a terrifying challenge because I remember I had wanted to write an interactive musical for years, and I was looking for the right partners, and I pitched all kinds of different people. And I remember actually the whole thing with Chorus began because I one of my favorite, another person who I've never worked with, who's a dear friend and I would be thrilled to work with someday, is Ken Wong. He actually offered me a job on his first kind of big breakout game, and I was just too busy at the time, which was Monument Valley. Kevin Pankin wrote the score. He did a wonderful job. The game is fantastic, but it always has that kind of like, damn, because it turned out so great. But I remember Ken and I had lunch at GDC a few years ago, and I said, would you ever want to make a musical? And he was like, nope. But I have a friend who would, and he connected me with Liam Esler,
Wow.
who is the producer of Chorus. And we started scheming, and he said, I'm friends with and partnered with this writer who was the writer on the Dragon Age games, David Gator, and he also wants to do a musical. And what do you think, the three of us? And I said, well, I'm buddies with Troy Baker, and he and I have been talking about doing a musical. And then Troy's like, well, I work a lot with Laura Bailey, and she's interested. And it was like this daisy chain of everybody realizing we all want to do this. It's really exciting, but it's a tall order because to me, interactive music is already challenging, but then to integrate that seamlessly with what is effectively the dialogue of the game, because the musical numbers end up taking that place. So every song has to be like a full set piece, like a proper musical, where it's like it's a number, it's an exciting theatrical experience, but yet you're also kind of at the controls, and there's genuine narrative branching that happens as a result
Yeah.
of your choices. It's not superficial level, I chose red and green and like changed out my avatar's look. It's like, no, people live or die based on these decisions, or that character has an enormous hardship or an incredible uplift based on these. Like, they have narrative implications. They're real choices, and the music has to reflect that, and it creates this interesting kind of circular situation where you're making choices maybe musically and then realizing the narrative consequences of them versus narrative decisions that then have musical consequences. And so we're in this exploration process with it. I'm really excited about it, and I'm thrilled that we were able to raise enough money on our FIG campaign that we're able to do it. I mean, we're all working by the skin of our teeth, but we're able to do it and make the game that we wanted to make, and hopefully kind of invigorate this little corner of the industry and make more of them after, and maybe hopefully inspire other people to take an interest in it, because I think there's no shortage of interest in musicals. In any case, slowing down, life's too short. Troy and I often quote this expression I came across once of paraphrasing. There's a lot to do, and I really hope I eventually leave this world utterly exhausted. Because I just there's a lot of exciting experiments, and there's a lot of things that I enjoy failing at, where I pick myself up and I say, okay, well, I learned a lot from that. And if you don't just constantly do stuff one way or another, you don't get the benefit of the successes or the failures. And so, yeah, I don't really have aspirations to slow down. I make different choices as I get older about what to focus on and what my interests are and where I'm putting my time. But it's still 24 hours, that tick by time and again. I'm always trying to figure out how to use all of them. And if I could have one superpower, it would be to never sleep again, because I so resent that time lost. I'm not one of those people that like wakes up in the morning and it's like, oh, this is just heaven. I wish I could just stay here forever. I'm like, I wake up, and if I feel tired when I wake up, I'm like, stupid fucking mortality. And it just drives me crazy. So yeah. But that said, I think every year the projects, they take on a very different shape, and sometimes they also take so long that a year is perceived as being less busy, when in reality it may actually have been more so. And because at any given time I'm also having conversations regarding projects where they may not ship until 2022 or later. So it's like a perfect example, actually. I remember a composer friend of mine, Sarah Schachner, who just scored the recently released Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I think it was 2018. She was very busy, but no game came out that she scored.
Yes.
Because it was like, a lot of work on projects that all kind of skipped that year by luck of the draw and came out in succession in 2019. Or maybe it was 2017 to 2018, something like that, because she's never not working on a variety of things. But sometimes those windows make it seem like, well, they've been just sitting around doing nothing, and it's like, far from it.
Yeah. To touch briefly back on Chorus, are there any stage or even film musicals that have influenced what you're doing on it? Is there anything in particular that it has stood out for you? As someone that's quite interested myself, I'd be curious to know.
Well, there's nothing that I'm actively aspiring to, pay homage to specifically. It's not, it's not like, oh, this is a big love letter to Rodgers and Hammerstein, or oh, this is a big, love letter to fill in the blank. Any of the luminaries in that space. I mean, Anthony Rapp is a good friend, and we're planning on, we were kind of tweeting back and forth, and then I love that some Star Trek website runs like, Anthony Rapp has just tweeted his way into being involved in a musical. And which was hilarious, because we had been talking, already and saying, like, because he's shooting Star Trek Discovery and pretty busy, and was like, would you be interested in if we could do this? And it was like, oh, absolutely, yes. And so then it's like, okay, well, obviously he's bringing this Rent
Yeah.
pedigree to the table. And even I saw him in when he was on tour through the U.S. and maybe internationally, um, a show called If Then that was him
Yes.
reuniting with Idina Menzel, and I went and saw that. We hung out
I did
afterward,
as
and
well.
yeah, it's one of those musicals like so many others that I said I absolutely adore the show, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember any music afterward. But I thought from a performance standpoint, from a book standpoint, it was great. Everyone was great in it, and I was very moved by it. Actually, I just thought the music was serviceable, and I find that even on very lauded, like Fun Home was another one that I was really moved by, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember the music afterward. But I loved it as a piece. So to answer your question, there's nothing that I'm sort of teeing up as our model, especially because I don't know how we even could, given the nature of what it is. It's an interactive musical. It has to be able to go a lot of places. That said, I am a diehard Leonard Bernstein fanatic. And to me, West Side Story is one of like the great creations of American art. To me, it is just an absolutely standout piece of work in the history of music. And so I'm sure it influences me in everything I do, including just writing game scores. I also had, like so many others, I really did have a pretty profoundly revelatory experience seeing Hamilton. I saw it twice. I saw it on Broadway in New York, and then I saw it when it toured through LA again. I remember Troy and I actually went and saw it together, and at intermission, it's the grand, amazing number of nonstop, which I deeply connected with. And then it goes to intermission. He turns to me and he's like, "Why do we bother?" And I thought, I fucking agree, man. It's just such a masterpiece. But what I love about them, and that I would hope to kind of honor in my own work, is just the fact that they use music as such an amazing storytelling device. It's not the writing in and of itself that I write my own way. And I have my own strengths and weaknesses and all that, and I'm not going to try to kind of be this amoeba absorbing somebody else's work in such a direct manner. We always have the hallmarks of our influences. You can always tell who loves what if you really analyze their music. But for me, it's that they're master storytellers. Those musicals in particular do such incredible jobs at working in multiple simultaneous parallel levels. And especially love in Hamilton, the way that there's like 1,000 phrases in the show that have these little 2 and 3 note motifs associated with them. Right. And the way that he recontextualizes them, it's like this reinvention of the leitmotif technique in film scores and in opera and in video game scores, where it's like, okay, da na 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 na. That's Princess Leia's theme. So every time we're kind of dealing with Leia related ideas, John Williams give us Leia's theme, and Lin-Manuel Miranda distills that down to this notion of like, look around. And what does that mean in the context of Hamilton? Because sometimes, he's looking around saying, in the middle of the Revolutionary War, look around at how lucky we are to be alive right now, as in we should be dead. And then just moments later, he spins it on its head, and it's look around at how lucky we are. This is the greatest time you could ever be alive. How amazing, how thrilling it is. We're crafting a system of government that's going to change the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like the incredible sleight of hand. It's like a magician playing cards where you suddenly just don't even, they're moving too fast for you. I was so blown away by the storycraft of it. And just kind of listened to it obsessively after I saw it. I went into it. I saw it in New York, knowing full well how popular it had become, but I never had listened to it, and I experienced it live for the first time. And then, of course, I relentlessly listened to the album and realized that it had so much more depth than I had even been able to it was too overwhelming to process in one viewing. To me, just the fact that there's no laziness to it. There's no filler material to it. There's no like, this song needs to just get us to the next scene, and it's just there to kind of amuse us. Like every moment is a chance to give us a little more insight into the characters, into the time period, into the struggle that they're undergoing, et cetera, et cetera. And if I can do anything approaching that with chorus, I'll be happy, irrespective of the genre of music or whatever. So to me, that's the real excitement. But there's so many. I just saw one last 2 nights ago here in LA that's brand new. Literally, I just got a targeted ad on Facebook for a show called Cages, and I knew nothing about it. I actually don't even know who wrote it. I didn't even look that up. I just saw it, and I called Troy and I said, "Hey, this looks interesting. Just make sure you're free in like a week." And then I bought tickets and we went and saw it. And ironically, we ran into one of the creative directors on Call of Duty. He was just like, "What are you guys doing here?" And it was like, "What are you doing here?" And it was like partially immersive theater, because you walk in and you're in this library and there's an actress who's in full costume who like holds your hand and walks you through. And so you're immediately in this immersive theater kind of space. And then they take you into a bar and all of the drinks are modeled based on motifs within the story, but you don't know any of that yet. You're just kind of, but they get you using the words, they get you in the language, even just by ordering your drink. And then I went and saw the show, and it was all built around projection and like audio immersion. So it was very, very intense visually and sonically, very loud and very kind of epileptically strobing. But it blew me away. It was one of those where I thought like this is, I did not know what I was going to get here. And I remember I said to Troy after, this was not a safe show. They really went for it. And by God, we need to do that too. Like if there was any doubt, what's going on in this space right now, there are people who are not fucking around and just saying, well, I'm just going to give you diet Alan Menken or something. Like there's some serious stuff. I mean, look, my agent represents also Pasek and Paul, and it's like those guys are basically the modern incarnation of Sondheim or not that he's gone or anything, but you know what I mean? Like they're between Dear Evan Hansen and La La Land and The Greatest Showman, and their new, like they wrote the new song in Aladdin. Like those two are just beasts. And but they're like very traditional. They're the kind of traditional model, and yet they're not stale and old fashioned. So even within that, they're fresh and unique. And it's like this. We got to go into this knowing full well where the bar is, because it's an amazing creative space.
Yeah, it's incredibly exciting. My own excitement, having been involved with musical theatre myself throughout the years and having been an intense consumer of it.
Performer? Is that what you mean? Like you're
I have, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Which roles? What shows have you?
Most recently, Legally Blonde. One of the three best friends, Pilar, was one of my most recent. But
awesome.
Yeah, absolutely love consuming it. When I heard chorus, I got emotional, because I went, here are two things that often seem to have no association that we're about to bring together in a brand new way that might help encourage more people into it. And it was very exciting for me to see as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I really hope we do. I hope we do justice, because it's like, obviously, I've dabbled in musical theater, in musical filmmaking in the past, and I've certainly written a lot of songs, and songs that have that theatrical kind of storytelling need. But I've also obviously worked in games, and I'm fully aware of what you're describing, that they're a little bit, not, well, I start to say they're a little bit oil and water, but that suggests that there's something systemically that keeps them separate. I think it's more like chocolate and peanut butter before people thought to combine them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like people love and take very seriously the two things independently. Yes. And hopefully, if we do our job right, and God knows I hope we can, people will recognize that the combo of the two has its own independent magical potential.
Yes.
So we'll see.
Well, you've got an incredible team behind it as well, so it's going to be very exciting to see what comes out over the next few years, over the development as that goes on.
I hope. And it
One
is a great
very
team. I feel very lucky. Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to
yeah.
cut you off, but it's
No,
it's
not at
very
all.
much worth acknowledging that it's chorus is not mine. It's very much collectively ours. And it would not exist if it were not for David and Liam, in particular, to spearhead it, and then of course my brother in arms, Troy, and so spectacularly happy that Laura has decided to join our party and be so involved and so excited about it. And there's no hired guns on this project.
Yeah.
Everybody's there because they want to be there. And so, yeah. Anyway,
No,
I
very exciting.
but go ahead. I didn't mean to derail you.
Sorry, one final question is what excites you the most about coming into a new year of projects and excitement? What is exciting you the most?
Um, that's interesting. I mean, certainly everything we've been talking about with chorus
Mm,
is a big focus because it's going to be a big challenge for me, and then I love that. I go out of my way to have those challenges.
yes.
I go out of my way to push myself somewhere I've not been, but I'm also starting to line up a bunch of experiments for um, interactive live music events,
Mm,
that trying to figure out ways to kind of, if when I write interactive music for a video game, I'm basically inviting the gamer who's playing to kind of co-author the experience with me. It's like I'm giving them the tools
mm,
through the music to try and, if nothing else, editorialize their experience. I have been for years experimenting with ways to make that, to take that gamer and put them in a theater and make it a
mm.
live experience as well.
Yeah.
And so, like, we do have a Journey live show where we play the whole game on stage with a live orchestra, and I'm conducting with these crazy hand signals in order to make the score as interactive on stage as it is in the game. And we
Oh,
just pluck players out of nowhere and just tell them just play, and they can still connect online with anybody they find. And so we're projecting it
huh.
for an audience as a concert, except that we don't know what's going to happen. Even between rehearsal and the show, it's always different. And so, and
Yeah.
that's been wonderfully exciting and challenging. And now it's like, okay, how do we involve the whole audience now? And
Hmm.
so that's thing. I've got a lot of experiments kind of teed up in that space as well that I'm very excited about. And I have no idea what will work and what won't, and what will be well received, or what I'll have a hard time getting off the ground and convincing people to do with me. It's like there's already a few things kind of lined up, and then others that are more pending, and that's exciting because to me, the interactivity is just such a compelling and exciting thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, but other than that, the most pure answer I could give you is that what excites me is that invariably there's a lot that I never saw coming. There's
Oh,
an inevitably some phone call that shows up of someone that I never even knew they existed, and they're turns out they're working on something brilliant, and they want to have a conversation about it. And in the times when that's happened, it turned out to be the most exciting thing that year. And until I literally answered the phone, I never knew it was going to happen. Or the opposite. Or I'll hear about someone's work, and then I'll chase them down and say I want to be involved. Like that's what happened with Erica. I just had a friend introduce us, and I played his prototype, and I said, "Where do I sign?" He wasn't like soliciting me to write the music. He was just showing it to me.
yeah.
I mean, maybe that was kind of his hidden agenda, but I basically just grabbed him and said, I gotta be a part of this. This is so exciting. You're making something brilliant. Um, and and so to me, it's the fact that the world is so dynamic, in the game industry especially, but even in the film industry, and in the live music and live theater world, and in the concert space. um, there's always just so much going on that, just by being sort of atoms and molecules bumping into each other, invariably I come across something I didn't know existed until the moment in which I come across it. And when that happens, it just is electrifying. It never stops to be just the most riveting thing. And I never understand boredom, because
Hmm.
I just think all you have to do is open your eyes, and there's this just unending fountain of excitement and inspiration. And so that to me is I guess the nebulousness, the unknown of what lies ahead is what excites me the most. If I don't sound hopefully lofty or pretentious, but it's just true. It's just been, I never knew about anything in advance until suddenly there it was in my
Yeah.
career, whether it's Journey or John Wick or everything in between. I don't, you never know.
That is absolutely true. What an absolute pleasure it has been to speak with you today, Austin, and thank you so much for being so generous with your time as well. I know it's the weekend and you're still working hard, but it's
All good.
appreciated nonetheless.